Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second Insight Series lecture for this semester. I think we are still recovering from the mid-sem break fatigue or post-fatigue, so we are waiting for more people to come in. But as they come in, we are glad to have with us Mr. Vadivel Sundaram. I've known him for a decade now, and he's been a close friend of mine. So he's been working in Ireland for the better half of the last decade, and I'm glad that today he'll be talking is close to my field of interest, and the idea of how does migration and cross migration and the concept of moving from one place to the other affect the idea of multiculturalism as well as intercultural relations. And he'll be talking about this concept in the context of Ireland, but he'll also be giving a broader picture as to how is it affecting education within Europe. So I'll give the abstract for the talk today, and then Debashmita will formally introduce him, and then we can have the talk from Vadivel. Global migration, multiculturalism, and intercultural relations in Ireland, a 21st century socio-cultural perspective. The abstract goes as follows. Global Citizenship Education, or GCE, is moving towards the creation of global affinity groups by bringing global issues into local spaces and sharing them in the school classroom and higher education institutions. On one hand, globalization has been consistently making global space more open for people. Second, the changing nature of the nation state created new forms of citizenship from national to regional, now moving towards the global. Third, migration happens for very different reasons, be it for saving your own life or to enhance your family's well-being. These broad categorizations have created new forms of affinity groups and identity groups in different destination countries and across the globe. The changing nature of individual cultural identity and creating new group identities at the global level are opening up new paths to intercultural relations among different cultural groups. Taking this into account, this lecture will be talking about three broad aspects. Number one, how the global community is moving towards creating new affinity groups by testing the GCE as a ground model. Number two, how the changing nature of national citizenship, particularly post-World War II, created new European identities at the regional and global level. And number three, given the above perspectives, what is the role of intercultural relations and how are these different cultural groups affiliating and identifying themselves, particularly in the Irish context? With this abstract, I invite Debashmita to give the formal introduction of our speaker.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second Insight Series lecture of this semester, hosted by the Humanities and Social Science Department at IIT Gandhinagar. The Insight Series lectures began in 2022 by Professor Ashish Khakha with a focus on indigenous peoples and development issues. Previous luminaries who have graced the lectures include P. Sainath, Professor Rashid Khalidi, and Professor Mahmood Mamdani. Today, we are very fortunate to have Mr. Vadivel Sundaram with us from Ireland. Vadivel Sundaram is co-founder and executive director, Cultural Synthesis Ireland. Currently, he coordinates the study of intersectional diversity and intercultural inclusion among different cultural communities living in Limerick City, and projects Misnich, which is courage, combining Egyptian Kybalion, Hermetic philosophy, and Ikigai Japanese philosophy. His research interests are in global citizenship, education, intercultural relations, peace building, and contextualizing Nussbaum's central human capabilities and well-being. He obtained his MPhil in International Peace Studies from the Irish School of Economics, the Trinity College Dublin, and his MA in Development Studies from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. His master's thesis examined the enforced disappearances and economic development in Kashmir. His MPhil thesis explored the relationship between Nussbaum's central human capabilities and Galtung's positive peace in peace building. He has worked with faith-based organizations such as Claritans in Sri Lanka, Caritas in Nepal, and the Jesuit Society in Tezpur, Assam. He is currently an elected representative 2024 to 2029 of the Limerick People Participation Network, overseeing the Strategic Policy Committee of Limerick City and County Council for Economic Development, Enterprise and Planning in Ireland. He also serves as one of the executive members in Limerick Migrant Integration Forum, founded by Limerick City and the County Council as part of the INTE Great project funded by the European Union. Thank you.
Before we begin, I just want to give Vadivel a small token of our appreciation, our memento from IIT Gandhinagar. If we can please take a round.
So very good evening all. That was a really kind introduction, because as you know, we know more than a decade from Tata Institute of Social Sciences. In my journey, a little bit diverted, and then I started work, went to Sri Lanka, and then from Sri Lanka to Nepal, and then from Nepal I went to Calcutta to Tezpur, and then straight away to Ireland. That was my short journey before starting all this. And after my graduation from Irish School of Ecumenics and Trinity College, I worked 2 years in Dublin. Then 2019, I moved to Limerick, that's on the west coast. I'll show in the map. From there, I started working with the local councillor. He is a first migrant councillor, elected migrant councillor from Bangladesh. So that gave me the new perspective into the politics and how the policies are shaping up and the migrant issues. And that really opened my larger space to explore a lot with the council, county council, and with the Irish government. And a couple of postings I got elected to represent the people of Limerick in strategic policy committees, which is working with the city council and the elected councillors. And then the Limerick Migrant Forum, Integration Forum was recently, we founded in last year. It was under the project, the Integrate project. I will talk more about it. And we have been the executive members from different diverse communities from Africa, different countries in Africa, and then East European countries and the Asian countries and East Asian countries. So, and then Latin American countries having the representation there. That was really the upcoming project to integrate looking at the integration from the European perspective. So first of all, when on my holiday, he asked me, can you deliver a lecture on the cultural side? I was thinking, what's on the cultural side? Okay, I thought intercultural relations and global citizenship education I was working. Then Professor Ashish asked me, why don't you add multiculturalism? I said, okay, it's part of multiculturalism. Then after 2 days, he asked me to, why don't you go with the global migration? So that's how the whole topic emerged. So it's like a 4 PhD topics I have to cover in 1 hour. Hopefully I will do my best, not with much data, not with theories, but I will I will share whatever we did with the pilot project, so a couple of data, how the integration, the emerging integration, and what are the issues we are facing, and what are the lacking at the policy level, that's how we are ignoring sub-dimensions, and where we are looking into it, where I am looking into it as a cultural synthesis island organization. So this is basically the physical map of Ireland. Basically, we have Ireland has 32 counties. 26 are in the main Ireland, and 6 will be in the Northern Ireland, and which has been divided into 4 provinces: Connaught, Ulster, Munster, and Leinster. This Munster, where I live here. This is where the Limerick, and all there's a physical map. Leinster is basically the capital city, Dublin. And moving forward, the Ireland history. The history goes back with the colonial history of 800 years, starting 1200 AD and prior, 1 year prior. And basically, the 16th century was a landmark in the Irish colonial history. 16th century was the landmark in the Irish colonial history, where the Ulster plantation revolution started between the peasants, Scottish peasants and the English peasants, and which gave the Irish identity. Followed by that, the years of colonialism and the development. So Ireland finally got independence in 1922. And after the year of independence, it went into a civil war between the parties who agreed whether to take the Irish Anglo Treaty or not. And there emerged the Fianna Fáil party, political party, which I am a member in. It came into play in 1927 and came to power in 1932. And nearly more than 70 years in the Irish independent history, they ruled the country. And from 60s onwards, there is a Northern Ireland conflict between the Protestants and the Unionists and the Catholic nationalists, which ended with the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, where the party Fianna Fáil played a major role in achieving the Good Friday Agreement. Whereas the Ireland economy is the richest in EU with the GDP with a 12.2% in 2022 European Commission statistics. Where when it started back in 1922, it was predominantly a rural economy, and Ireland trade policy was determined in London. As we know, all the colonial part London controlled. So Ireland and UK joined the European Commission in 70s alongside with UK, and the creation of EU single market in 90s, where the European Union, and that was the favorable time for Ireland. Economic boom, which is the Celtic tiger or Celtic hare we call, between 1995 and 2007. And followed by it, there was a boom in the economy, and then which over the economy in 2008, there was an economic crisis, eventual crisis, which overcoming all this thing. And then finally, Ireland was hit by the Brexit, which happened in January 31, 2020. So the census 2022, there are 632,000 were non-Irish people, which accounts for 12% of the population. And half of them are from European Union, which is like Poland, Romania, Moldova, most of the East European countries. In the year preceding the census, which is 2021, which is a year post-COVID, year 2020, there are almost 89,000 people, nearly 90,000 people came to Ireland, out of which 10,000 came from India and 5,000 are from Brazil. And these 10,000 people are mostly the working professionals in the IT sector. And the Brazilians were mostly came to study English and to see the livelihood maybe in Italy or in Portuguese. So these are the two dimensions. And of the largest ethnic group is a white background, where the Polish, Romanian account for 10%, where the Asian communities, India, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, they account for 2% of the population, migrant population, and the Black and the Irish Black account for 1%. The migrants from top EU5 countries are from Spain, Romania, France, Italy, and Poland. Here, Romania and Poland are straightforward migrants, whereas Spain, France, and Italy are accountable for the migrants from different countries. Say, for example, the Romanian migrants settled in Spain for years, and then they moved to Ireland. Same as the Polish migrants in France. Bangladeshi migrants who worked and settled having the European passport from Italy, they moved to Ireland in the post-COVID time. Basically for the betterment, for investment in the business, and to see the more mobile labor. And then there is a large increase in the religion was among the migrants were Orthodox, which accounted for 65% of the Orthodox population and 32% of the Islamic population and 141% of the Hindu population. And this 141% of the Hindu population, which I did the study on the sale of paneer and the changing demography. Because before post-COVID, most of the migrants from an Indian community are from a southern part of India, Kerala and Tamil Nadu, where we are not not used to the eating paneer. So it precisely the paneer, when the things came up, it is predominantly the people migrated from Bangalore, Pune, and Hyderabad. The engineers, software engineers from Bengal in Bangalore, and then Maharashtra, Gujarat from Pune, and then the Hyderabad have the other sectors of the people. So this accountable for that 100 Hindu population. And this time in the census 22, we came up with Malayalam and Tamil in the census for the first time as a linguistic side. So hopefully in the next census, we will be pitching in more for Urdu and Bengali speaking people. So moving forward, is a migration side. There are, before starting with the core of the speech, I also talk about some couple of global events happened in 1900, in the 20th century. From the World War I, pre-World War I, it was the industrialization. The people are moving to England and other parts of France, Germany for the economic laborers. And then the World War I, World War II, particularly after post-World War II, the people are moving from Turkey and other countries as economic laborers, and which settled in Germany, which come up with that three big Washington consensus, IMF, World Bank, and United Nations, and the Marshall Plan for Redevelopment of Europe. And following that, there is a cultural, over the period of 60s and 70s, they saw the more of cultural movements within the Europe, from Turkey and from other European countries within the mobile. But in the post-90s, when after the fall of Berlin Wall and the fall of Soviet Union, most of the East European countries, the past communist countries like Romania, Poland, they started moving into the continental Europe. So these are the few landmarks wherever over the presentation. If you can relate this map, you will see how the multiculturalism happened over a period of time in Europe. So basically, this is a cultural map. If you see here, this is the Irish, the Celtic culture will have the one line from the Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and then from the part of France. And then you will have the Portuguese, the Iberian culture, and then coming down to the France and the Italy with the Pyrenees, and then slowly move on to the German and this one, the German culture, and then the Slavic culture, whole of Slavic culture, and then the Scandinavian part. And this is the core of the Balkan countries. So all the migration happened over here. This is the pattern over the period of the lecture. You can relate to the movement of migrating people. So the global migration and multiculturalism. Migration always had its own impact, and that impact was studied in the scientific study in the academics, and it opened the public debates in the host countries with the political parties. So the major factors are geography, demography, economic, religious, linguistic, and historical factors. The outflow and inflow always create the network and bind them socially together. The social binding differs with community to community. The East European community or the Asian community, African communities, it differs that social binding. And the early theories basically based on spatial distance, population, and on economics. And interestingly, in 2011, Zakia and Haas, they postulated the theory. They argued the extreme inequalities are visible through the mass communication. So hence they prove the non-forced migration is often driven by the relative deprivation than their objective needs. This is a new area of study to analyze how the social media is playing in migration. And moving on, there is a chain migration. It has created the diaspora growth through diaspora groups, which creates a further flow. Irish in the 19th century, where during the famine, the Irish migrants, they moved to the US for the betterment of their life. In the 20th century, the late Sri Lankan war, after Sri Lankan people, they moved to Canada, or they moved to the continental Europe, Germany, France, in particular, and UK. And there is another pattern, always say if the country B attracts C from C, always the country B moves some of the migrants to country A, where then when C and A are connected, were linked by migration, the migrants living in the country C always expects more alternatives from the country A. And these are the classic examples because of the better social welfare model postulated by the Collier in 2013. And apart from that, in the last year, when I'm looking at the research in Limerick and Ireland, most of the Kerala people who came as working as a staff nurse, they started moving to Australia, particularly Australia. When we were having a conversation with them, they said because of the climatic conditions. So they came to Ireland, they are well off with their visa, they have a good reputation after 2-3 years, or even the settled migrants for 20 years. For the betterment of their life or enjoying the climatic conditions, they started moving to Australia. So that is even the climatic conditions nowadays play the role when they're well off with their migrant. And then there's a homophily, the concept which relates with mostly with the social networking theory, which is dominant among the linguistic and religious groups. So linguistic groups, maybe every migrant, they are much affiliated with their linguistic language. And then religious group, of course, it's a humble few people come and relate them within the religion, like say Hinduism or Orthodox or Christians. Even the Catholic Christians, Ireland is there. When the predominantly Kerala people are Christians, they don't go to the Catholic church. They have their own church. And Polish, they have the church, separate churches. This kind of ethno-religiousness, ethnic centrism is very much visible there. Even after the Ukraine war, most of the Ukraine people came to Ireland. They don't go to any of the church. They have a Mary statue on the riverside. Every Saturday, they used to do their prayer because they consider themselves Orthodox. They are not related to the Catholics. So religious, that homophily is always there. And it's much more among the Spanish, French, or English colonial hegemony. It comes with the hegemony also. And this is small data based on the long distance migration. It's just a number, so I want to show you. During between 1840 and 1940, between the 100 years, the people out of Europe were nearly 60 million people. And then there was a breakdown where they moved to United States, Argentina, Canada, Brazil. Here, that's a pattern. The people from Europe moved to Latin American countries. And then Russia to Serbia, nearly 13 million people, and out of south of China to Manchuria, there are nearly 21 to 23 million people. And then the Philippines, Americans, Thailand, followed by China, followed by Northeast Asia, where nearly 30 to 33 million people, the Korean abroad or Japanese abroad. And then particularly when it comes down to India, the migrant during the colonial times were to Burma, Ceylon, Malay, and immigration elsewhere, Assam, and the internal migration accounts for 10 to 15 million. So these are the multiculturalism, if you can see, relate with the pattern how the people are moving around. And this over a period of time, the country turns to become into a multicultural, multilingual, multi-ethnic with the group formation. And then the intra-China and the intra-South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, East Mediterranean, West Asia, particularly Europe, Turkey, refugees, and others. And intra-Europe between the Russians, Central Europe, Italians, UK, including Ireland, Iberia, France, North Sea, Scandinavian, Baltic countries, Southeast Europe, and then the intra-Americas is between US, Canada, on the westward, intra-US, Canada to US, Mexico, Caribbean, down to the Andes and the Bolivia, Peru, and then the intra-Caribbean islands, the West Indies and the other Jamaica Islands, and the Southern Cone, the Falkland Island. So globalization under global migration under globalization. Vertoch 2007, he coined the term super diversity, which is because of the unprecedented migrant diversity in Britain and other migrant receiving countries in Europe. Basically, he postulated three characteristics for it. Basically, the new, small, and scattered, and multiple in origin, and transnationally connected, and socioeconomically differentiated and legally stratified. These are legal migrants, which have different status quo in their visa, and they're transnationally connected. This is much more important. Like the Bangladeshi migrants, as I mentioned, they live in Italy, they have connection in Spain or Ireland, and at the same time, they have the connection in Bangladesh. And then they become increasingly more complex. So today we are looking at the concept with the super diversity, and it becomes more fluid in the post-COVID time. And historically, the migrants arriving in destination countries through the bilateral corridors, whether it could be the French colonies in Africa reaching the France, or the British colonies, they are going to UK in the post-independence period, same as Portuguese, Brazil, and then the other Latin American countries to the Spain. In post-1990, the increase in socioeconomic and cultural interconnectedness, borders opened up more open. There's a neoliberal period where the mass communication with the increasing flow of idea technologies as postulated by Cassels and Miller, and that opened the rapid migration, the people movement, and that was the super diversity, which accounted for even the smaller communities, say small group within the subgroups, they started moving in. Like say people, one from Bangladesh, again I can cite from Chittagong. They are the small groups, they moved directly to Ireland. if you take out the rest of the groups from Dhaka and other people, their first migration to Malaysia, where their uncle or previous any connected family, extended family members will be there. Then they move to the Western world. But the people from Shillite and Chittagong, they moved straight to Ireland or any other European country. And the intercultural relations. So now this is the part where I'm started working on when looking at the culture and other thing. What about the intercultural relation? How the relations operate? Because as I connected with migrants, the diversity, the sub-dimensions in Pakistan or India, Bangladesh or African countries. So I see here basically emphasis on the 5 dimensions: structural, social, political, civic, and cultural integration. And it creates 2 distinctive groups: the affinity groups, but through social cohesion, and the identity groups through the group relations. And this group relation is again very important among the Asian communities, how they relate to each other, either with the Sindhi people or Pakistanis or Tamil, Sri Lanka, Kerala, Telugu community, Andhra, Karnataka community, or the Indian community. So these are the dimensions, larger dimensions, the sub-dimensions. And the Portenberger argues as a acculturation process, a common cultural life. They want to create a common cultural life, but under what common cultural life? Like religion, that's the most evident in last 5 years. Under the banner of Hinduism, they connect with that common culture, or the Indian culture. So intercultural relations is a relatively different. It starts with looking at the integration, how much differences are there. So for example, when the period, it took a longer period of integration when the greater the difference among the communities or the subordination or greater the strength of the ethnic social system. Like for example, the people in Ireland, the Kerala and Tamil people will go each other because more or less they're connected by language and historically they're much equal connected. But the same when it comes to the Maharashtra or Andhra group, Kerala group will be much more distinct, but Tamil people will be much more closer because they have the Madras presidency. Chennai will be a common factor will play. And same with the Kannada, same the Bangalore and the other relative will play. The Mangalore side up North Kerala will have a easy connectivity, but the lower Kerala will remain excluded. So these are the small nuances where we can relate and study when we possibly trying to do the policy level. And then at the racial countries like America and looking at Europe, the assimilation process is slow because of the racial minorities where the organized prejudice. And then the integration among the ethno-religious communities is very low because of the strong religious communities and their institutions like Orthodox churches, gurudwaras, mosques, and temples. Intercultural dimension, the relative dimensions comes with the structural, social, and cultural dimensions. Structural talks about the economic resources and positions, where you become a taxi driver or you work in the hospitality sector or a hospital. And the social dimension, it again comes with the horizontal aspects of integration. So the same people will coming down to Kerala, they will end up with the same working pattern. Or the Bangladeshis, they will end up with the same pattern as a taxi drivers. And the cultural dimensions, they preserve their attitudes and values, and which get sometimes they promote their own programs. They even talk about their generational fighting or their war of independence to the school activities. The children will perform their activities during their celebration days. And following that, this is a research question. Unfortunately, it is not opening for me. So basically, I had a research question on interpersonal relationship within their own culture and the interpersonal relationship with the outside culture, and same interpersonal relationship with their own community with the different communities. And then I divided then the intercultural education in school and how the children behave the interrelationship within the school and within the community, and then the parents' engagement with the intercultural education activities in school. And here I went with the sub-dimensions of the cultures. Like when I took India, I precisely went with the Kerala people, Tamil people, Andhra, Karnataka, Maharashtra. And then if I go to the Pakistani communities, I talk about the separate the Punjabis, Baluch, Pathans on Northwest frontier, and then the Sindhi people. And then the Afghan communities, same as we divided. And then the African communities, Sudanese, North Sudan, South Sudan, Nigerians, different tribes accordingly. So it was a bit complicated. And we collected nearly 200 samples as a part of our pilot study. And the interesting findings are here, the community identity building largely remains neutral among the East European countries and strong among the South Asian communities and the African communities. The interpersonal trust among the same nationalities remains neutral and very strong among the South Asian communities and relatively low with African communities. Because the African communities, they either they divided on the relate themselves on the tribes and next on the religion, Christianity and Islam. So that gives the divide. And the interpersonal trust among the other nationalities remain high among the East European countries because of Polish, Romanian, Moldovan, and very low among the South Asian countries and the African countries. The intercultural trust, same or other nationalities remain neutral among East European countries and low among South Asian countries and very high among the Asian countries. But when it comes to the cultural day, Africa Day is the height. At its height, every country will get united, irrespective of their forgetting religion, language, tribe. When it comes to that Africa Day program in the month of March, they all get united, and it's like a blockbuster. And another moving forward in school, the intercultural education at school remains high because it's part of the government policy. But education at home, when the students come back home, it is very low. And inclusive education or multilingual education remains low because Ireland is a newly the migrant country. Well, like UK, we don't have any part of the curriculum language as a part of a curriculum like Tamil or Urdu. And inclusive education, the migrant women participation workforce among strongly differ. Among the East European country and African communities will be very high, and the South Asian communities, it remains very low because of the religious reasons, and then either they might come with a dependent visa, so they won't get access to the workforce. So, in the urban interculturalism and the urban governance, the complexity of diversity comes with the 5 factors. The refugee and asylum seekers, they are the first category. Second category, intra-EU mobility. These are the new people movements after the post-COVID period, like say from Italy, Spain, they're moving to Ireland. And then the labor market. So today, from the present government, they announced for 3 lakh job market open for Ireland. We are welcoming country, hopefully. And then the student population is Indian students are more. There are increasing North Indian students. So we have student communities and then the family integration. And this accounts with non-documented people, undocumented people, and then the refugees, and then the working IT sector people, family integration. So here the regularization of the long-term undocumented migrant scheme in Ireland, which was introduced in 2022, was a landmark. Overnight, they gave 17,000 undocumented people a legal status. So that was really a betterment of the people. They went back to their own countries. They can have their passport and everything with the legality. And the concept of super diversity emphasis on considering social local dimension in the policy making and the study for migration and diversity. That local dimensions, as a cultural synthesis Ireland, our organization, we are looking into the sub-dimensions of cultures, every culture. And moving down, the diversification of diversity comes from the different ethnic backgrounds and the mixing of hybridization of other groups. And these are the 3 important projects which the European Union had it in the last 25 years. The upstream project, which mainstreaming the integration governance and imagination. The project to assist cities to develop their own policies for the migrants, because which from the ground level they want to do rather than from the top down from the government. And the integrate project is where I am directly linked with the integration strategies for refugees and asylum seekers in Europe. It is basically to build a 2-way communication channel to integrate the refugees and the asylum seekers. And this was started as a pilot project in Europe in 2022 with the 5 countries: Cyprus, Greece, Italy, Spain, and Ireland. And in Ireland, with the Integrate project, we founded the Limerick Migrant Integration Forum, which will be led by the migrants. and we make our own decisions. We represent the issues, and we make a data to the council and representation to the integration committee in the city council, and then they go for actions, the building actions. So existing policy models in all the European countries, they look at from the assimilation model or integration model, multiculturalism model, universalism, differentialism. Of all these models, they miss the integral approach. The integral approach, they're looking at the dimensions, which I talked about, the sub-dimensions of the culture. Now they want to talk it, and they want to build the intercultural dialogue. So the European Union is moving to the intercultural dialogue and the intercultural relations. So all this part of which they came as a global citizenship education. And when I touched with this, UNESCO and the Irish government are co-working on this project between 2021 to 2030. When I get into the GCE, what is GCE and all, so to start with the citizenship, what basically before citizenship talked about is basically T.H. Marshall. He mentioned about the civil rights, political and social rights, which is of individual liberty, exercising the political power and the minimum economic welfare. The individual and collective rights are not distinguished in citizenship, which is overcome by the 5 dimensions of the GCE. It gives the collectively, it brings people in a collective manner. So first choice, the way of thinking, and here it reframes the affinity group and identity group. Affinity group through engagement, and it creates identity group through interconnectedness. The second, creating self-awareness and awareness of others. And third is a practice of cultural empathy. And 4, it is a principled decision making. And 5, participation in social and political life of one's community. And since under the broader 3, under the broader umbrella, it is categorized under social responsibility, global competence, and global civic engagement. And the global responsibility basically to others, to society and to environment. Global competence is to interact, is to communicate, and is to work. And the global civic engagement is a global community issues as a local community issues. And this is the Irish aid strategy, which came up in 2021 to 2025, where we focused on climate change, hunger, peace, global inequality, and justice. This broader 5 topics has been introduced in the school curriculum at a different level of schools, and engaging public to act individually at the same time collectively. And who we work with the teachers, trainers, and educators, the pupils and students of primary, post-primary, and further education and third level students, young people and youth volunteers, adult community education practitioners, educational institutions, NGOs, the government department, and agencies. The Irish government are increasing 10 million euro per year to this strategy, and the launch of a new primary school program to explore how to expand into the early years of education, to strengthen the local government and their PPN, the People Participation Network, and to engage with the local communities, and that's definitely with the different cultural communities, and increasing funding for research on GCE, and use digital learning as a new technologies to reach new learners and new communities in the global south. And moving forward, the island footprint and the key objective is strengthen the citizenship engagement, and through the domestic policy context. And briefly show these are the different government ministry. The ministry that is a Department of Education and the Department of Further Education. They particularly focusing on education on sustainable development, while the Department of Children, Equity, Disability and Integration and Youth, they focus on inclusion and anti-racism policy, and the government on environment, climate change, on sustainable development goals, the Ministry of Rural and Community Development and Housing and Local Government, they focus on the work with the different cultural communities, then they engage with the international organizations. UNESCO is part of this program, and other organizations, the National Council for Curriculum Assessment, Teaching Council, and local authorities, all are coordinately interacting with each other and with building the curriculum. And some of the critical thinking towards the GCE, it comes from the Sharon Stein, where she argues with the 3 dimensions, creates only entrepreneurial, liberal humanist, and anti-oppressive. we cannot ignore three dimensions because it creates, as Zama Bersin told about, it creates only the people knowing, being, and relating. Just the individuals are relating. Here I had a beautiful example. One of my friend, he shared when I was traveling in Delhi. His daughter, he told me his daughter immediately started boycotting Starbucks. He asked her daughter why, and they said Israel has invested in Starbucks. So we group of girls, we decided to boycott Starbucks. And then they said how the children are thinking forward and they are moving forward. And then I asked, what about the historical understanding of a conflict or the history? They said, yes, they don't know anything much, but it creates a general community where the global issues. When people are affected, Gaza people are affected, it creates a general people in India, a small group of people. But how forward they will take it forward, it's $1 million question. And the universal issues are addressed. And this is what the GCE tried to do. They bring the climatic issues into the school. They bring global hunger, global justice into the school curriculum. And they create universal students. Or it will create a real citizens, global citizens with the awareness of different cultures, tribes, their identities, and preserving and coming out of the global conflicts, the real addressing, touching the structural roots of the conflicts. So if that is works, then the GCE will be a different model of education, or else it will create a global citizenship. And as it critically evolving in the future, this is from a document from the United States Higher Education from University of Wisconsin and Madison document. It clearly states in 2008, global replaceability of workforce through outsourcing and migration of labor, thereby creating global consumers, global customers, global markets, global suppliers, and global competitors. Already the supply chain management, when you look into it, they are doing all this on this, very much organized at the global level, either operating from Germany or from Rotterdam port or Turkish port. It is much more evident. And here comes to the Martha Nussbaum, where I worked with my thesis, and I'm closely connected with the central human capabilities. She argues for a critical self-examination and recognition of ties to others, and ability to imagine oneself on the other's shoes. The others to be assessed through recognition and imagination. But what she postulated, it comes only with the gender perspective. She took as a gender perspective. Whether it will be applicable to the whole society will be again questionable, because given the gender discrimination among different societies and different communities or religious communities, it will be again, it has to be re-examined. And the creating the cosmopolitan side, Thomas Paine, he argued for individualism, universality, and generality, the example I shared before. Or as by Pagden, who argues for it will create a single human culture. Whether it could be like American culture, individualistic culture, or we will represent all the collective culture of everyone. And the global-minded citizens, the old phrase like think globally, act locally, or what postulated by the Isaiah Berlin calls it as a one universal culture, but death of culture, as he postulated in 1991 with the dissolving of the Soviet Union. He postulated that. So with this one, I finish a brief presentation. Hopefully, I try to present what the Ireland and the Irish government, we are trying GCE as a model, testing model. Maybe I'm not sure, but my assumption it could be with the end of sustainable development goals, the global community can come up with a sustainable education. The one classical example which I came to last year, there is a new position in the council, city council, the sustainability curricula officer. I was surprised to know what is sustainability officer. Environmental impact of our officer and the other categories are there. This sustainability officer will go through the sustainability of the project, considering all the global issues like climate change, particularly climate change, climate issues, and then with the other issues. And then eventually I found, I think LSE, they came up with a 12-month course for a sustainability officer program, certificate course on sustainability officer. So something the European global community, they're trying new methods. Maybe they might come, maybe I could be wrong, or we have to open on see where we have to wait. But To the global south, how it will reflect when I reflect, and how the culture will be represented in it. So far, I haven't found anything. They are testing on that 5 grounds. The culture is not played in GCE. And that's where my organization, we took culture as a research part. We are breaking the sub-dimensions, and we are trying to represent to the Irish Aid. Our report will be in 28. After the pilot study, we're going for the main research for the other big cities from moving out of Limerick, Cork, Dublin, and then Galway. So with this one, I keep things open for more discussion where I can share my experiences 7 years with the council and with the political party and with the different communities I lived in. So thanks for listening, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, everyone. And this is our address. I don't have any hard copy of the card. So this is our streamed one. And to everyone, today is St. Patrick's Day in Ireland. So I wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day on behalf of Ireland and the Irish people and all other cultural communities living in Ireland.
Thank you, Vadivel. So I think he has given us a lot of food for thought, and particularly with the context of this whole homogenization of culture that is taking place within Europe, despite the fact that there is, I mean, as you mentioned, super diversity that is coming up in within Europe from multiple countries. But I have some questions, but I'll maybe allow the audience if they have any questions to, to share their thoughts and reflections.
This whole idea of, I think the last quote by Berlin is an excellent quote. The one you put, this universal culture is the death of culture. Yeah, that's what I feel. It's just the same that we find in, environmentalism. We're creating monocultures, and monocultures are not resistant to change. They're not resistant to, adversity, and they die quickly. And part of, like, for example, in this model of, let's say we all want to have a sustainability officer, or we all want to have this, or there seems to be a monotyping of a certain perspective that comes with that kind of a agenda. How do you maintain a diversity of perspective within a framework like that?
When we talk about the monoculture, yes, that's what GCE is trying to do. With the like say they create a single culture, universalism, by talking about the global issue, bringing the global issues. But that's why representing the culture is my question inside. So far, I don't have any answer in the model, GCE model, they don't have it. Maybe in the second phase, by 26 to 30, the second phase, they might pitch in the culture side to test the different cultural communities, the subcultures, the diversity, how the diversity will be represented under the justice, global justice, they might come up. So far, they have come up with the global issues. So that's it, because this is a new model. Actually, this is not into place. Where I started studying on it, where when the Irish government, Irish strategy, they started it. So yes, so far it creates only the monoculture, it creates generality, it will create universalism, and it will wither away with time. And maybe they might want to create a one global without diversity, how they will try to address. Only I have to wait and see for that.
But you're almost saying that this is inevitably a bad prospect.
GC.
Yeah.
GC is not a bad prospect. It might come up. So far, yes, they have not touched the cultural part.
No, I mean, you're saying that in the future it might wither away, right? I mean, it's bound to lead to those kinds of.
So if they go with the same culture, if they don't touch with the culture, they want to create only the general communities.
Right.
Like a general communities, they bring the global issues. They create, okay, everybody will aware of the global issues. And without the cultural understanding, then yes, this will go wither away. The people can't withstand. Like the example yesterday when I had a conversation with my friend, there are a small group of girls, they're boycotting the Starbucks. But when they do the research, the culture, and then culture bring into the representation in the global citizenship, then every culture will be preserved, every cultural community representation will be given. And then there's a diversity, like it will create like a rainforest. They might go, that's a concept I'm thinking.